lost in your mind. I wanna know, am I losing my mind? Never let me go. If this night is not forever, at least we are together. I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not alone. Anywhere, whenever, apart but still together. I know I'm not alone. 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 Unconscious mind, I'm wide awake. Wanna feel one last time. Take my pain away. If this night is not forever, at least we are together. I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not alone. Anywhere, whenever, apart but still together. I know I'm not alone. I know I'm not alone.
We were young, posters on the wall, praying we're the ones that the teacher wouldn't call. We would stare at each other, cause we were always in trouble. And all the cool kids did their own thing. I was on the outside, always looking in. Yeah, I was there, but I wasn't. They never really cared if I wasn't. We all need that someone who gets you like no one else, right when you need it the most. We all need a soul to rely on, a shoulder to cry on, a friend through the highs and the lows. I'm not gonna make it alone. La 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 la. I'm not gonna make it alone. La 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 la. Then I saw your face, your forgiving eyes, looking back at me from the other side, like you understood me. And I'm never letting you go. We all need that someone who gets you like no one else, right when you need it the most. We all need a soul to rely on, a shoulder to cry on, a friend through the highs and the lows. I'm not gonna make it alone. La 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 la. I'm not gonna make it alone. This could be a good night for good times, and you look like a good time. We're dancing to dancing in the moonlight. Now I want you back. Can you make me feel better? This could be a good night for good times, and you look like a good time. We're dancing to dancing in the moonlight. Now I want you back. Can you make me feel better? Do you think you're better off alone? I think you better come along. Can you make me feel better? This could be a good night for good times, and you look like a good time. We're dancing to dancing in the moonlight. Now I want you back. Can you make me feel better? Do you think you're better off alone? I think you better come along. So if you think you're better off alone, I think you better come along. Can you make me feel better? This could be a good night for good times, and you look like a good time. Dancing to dancing in the moonlight. Now I want you back. Can you make me feel better? Do you think you're better off alone? I think you better come along.
Say you running on the road, so get out the way. Push the pedal to the floor, blow 'em all away. Yeah, you see I'm getting close, I accelerate. Going faster than fast, hit the gas, lose control, I won't crash. Running high, put your money on the dash, throw the dice. Lose control, I won't crash. Running low, I won't crash. When you slow, I won't crash. Running, say.
Look at what you've done. Stand still, falling away from me. When it takes so long, fire's out. What do you want to be? Now I'm holding on. Myself was never enough for me. Gotta be so strong. There's a power in what you do. Now every other day I'll be watching you. I'll show you what it feels like. Now I'm on the outside. We did everything right. Now I'm on the outside. I'll show you what it feels like. Now I'm on the outside. We did everything right. Now I'm on the outside.
Before we go into more details about the heart, about the downward protruding form, it is found in front, is known as the left subclavian, the left pulmonary artery, that would be superior vena cava and sinus.
Oh, I didn't know they had one.
Have you ever wondered why vampires always go for the neck? Maybe it's because of that big, juicy jugular vein that lies just underneath the muscles of the neck. No bony obstacles in the way. The large internal jugular vein carries all of that bloody goodness from the brain back down to the heart to be reoxygenated again. So it's an excellent target point for any vampire. Easy access. And loaded with blood. Enough of that creepy vampire talk though. We all know vampires aren't real. But just to be safe, I'll put on a turtleneck while we plow on with today's tutorial. Today we're going to learn about the main veins of the head and neck. We're going to start by taking a look at the three main veins of the head and neck: the internal jugular vein, the subclavian vein, and the brachiocephalic vein. We'll then explore the main tributaries of each of these veins and describe the specific areas these veins and their tributaries drain. To finish off, we'll look at some clinical notes concerning the venous drainage of the head and neck. Before we dive into the bulk of this tutorial, let's just have a quick reminder of what veins do. Veins are blood vessels that mainly drain deoxygenated blood from areas around the body, except for the pulmonary veins, which carry oxygenated blood from the...
Hey Siri, set theme to light mode. Thanks, bruh. What do you want to be? Veins of the head and neck. I think I mentioned 3, right?
Explore the main tributaries of each of these veins and describe the specific areas these veins and their tributaries drain. To finish off, we'll look at some clinical notes concerning the venous drainage of the head and neck. We'll then explore the main vein and the brachiocephalic vein. We'll then explore the main tributaries of each of these veins and describe the specific areas these veins and their tributaries drain. And neck. From areas around the body, except for the pulmonary veins, which carry oxygenated blood from the lungs to the heart. Venous blood is returned to the heart, where it is pumped to the lungs to be reoxygenated. The ultimate goal for the veins of the head and neck is to bring venous blood to the superior vena cava, which transports blood to the right atrium of the heart. Most veins contain valves, which help to maintain a unidirectional blood flow. While arteries have branches, veins have tributaries. Tributaries are smaller veins which drain into the larger main veins. We'll meet some of those today. Okay, let's focus on the veins of the head and neck. We'll begin with the internal jugular vein.
I guess these three are tributaries. Tributaries. That's your word. The vein that empties into, yeah, okay, fair enough. Okay, let's try to carry on. Wait, actually, is anyone actually watching this? I pause the time for now. Guess that's Adrian.
Could you imagine?
Bro, why are you live streaming yourself studying?
I do what I want, fam.
I said hello and you didn't respond. I'm hurt.
I don't have any ways to look at the comment.
You've lost a
Wow.
subscriber.
Oh,
You've
how-
lost
yeah,
a
you've
subscriber.
lost a subscriber.
Why don't you just suck my dick, yeah?
Oh, is that the first time you've ever subscribed to anything, Arvin?
What do you mean? I subscribe to a lot. I feel like that's a joke that I'm not getting.
Yeah, to be fair, you kind of missed the joke, so I'm not going to explain that.
What was the joke? Please.
Like, I can't. No, its course has been run off, and it's crashed and burned. So let's just leave it die in the dust. You know.
Oh my god! I just crashed into a rock and it's making noises at me.
There's an entire course on incels. Jesus fucking Christ, man.
Oh, you know what? I actually did the exact same thing at college. It was so wild. They were like, here's like a speckle because like, we have to do this like bullshit like I don't know. It's like just life lessons, I guess. Like random shit, and one of the sections was just incels. I was like,
I've never.
a group of like teenage boys who are incredibly antisocial. Not me, by the way. Like I was the most social one there. That's the shocking thing.
I've never met a male incel, but I've met plenty of female incels. And
What's a
political
female incel?
Basically, any woman who like says like men are like the shittiest thing.
Well, this
Like,
is
on
some great
God's
stream content.
Thanks,
Why are you streaming this, you ton?
I just randomly joined. I'm leaving.
Yeah.
Bye bye.
Oh no.
Okay, bye.
Oh wait, you can just see my face. Lol. Yeah.
The internal jugular vein is a paired vessel, extending from the base of the skull to the sternal end of the clavicle on each side of the body.
Are you actually going to study though? So the internal jugular vein starts. So the origin starts from oh my god, my handwriting's so bad. Origin starts from the skull, base of the skull.
Extending from the base of the skull to the sternal end of the clavicle on each is a paired vessel, extending from the base of the skull to the sternal end of the clavicle. On each side of the body. Looking at this transverse section through the neck, we can see that the internal jugular vein travels within the fibrous carotid sheath, just lateral to the carotid artery. Looking at this transverse section through the neck, we can see that the internal jugular vein travels within the fibrous carotid sheath, just
Travels within the carotid fibrous carotid sheath. What is in the sternal end? I think she said mediosternal end. So I guess it's towards the inward, lateral, mediosternal end. Alright. It's the enlarged conjugular medial part of the bone. What do you want to be? Gonna take so long. What do you want to be? Oh, let me do that. Okay, I got the body now. The body closes now. Let's close Spotify as well. What is that? Whilst I have open. Should be fine. Where the hell did he go? Let's honey, jugular, internal jugular vein. What the hell? Why the hell is it doing that? Good jiggity jaggedy. Okay, I'm not doing that. Let's take a 5-minute break. I know I did poo bowl, but still. What the freak? Why is my camera sitting like that? Oh, why is it doing that? What the freak? Did my camera just die? Okay, I start a 25-minute timer now.
Lateral to the carotid artery. This vein can be found just deep to the sternocleidomastoid muscle and therefore is not usually visible on the surface of the skin. Mastoid muscle and therefore is not usually visible on the surface of the skin. The artery. This vein can be found just deep to the sternocleidomastoid muscle
So it's from the sternocleido. What did she say?
This vein can be found just deep to the sternocleidomastoid muscle and therefore is not usually visible on the surface of the skin. The internal jugular vein is the main brain drain. It is formed by the union of the sigmoid and inferior petrosal sinus. Sigmoid and
Formed by the sigmoid sinus. I guess it's the
inferior petrosal sinus.
inferior
The internal jugular vein then extends down to the neck to drain into the brachiocephalic vein, as we can see in this posterior view of the neck.
And then it travels to the brachiocephalic vein.
Neck. It drains venous blood from the majority of the skull, brain, oral cavity, and superficial structures of the head and neck.
So it drains brain, skull, oral cavity, and superficial head and neck. I'll just put H and D. I can't be asked to write the whole thing. No, H and N.
Tributaries of the internal jugular vein include the sigmoid sinus, the inferior petrosal sinus, the meningeal veins, the pharyngeal venous plexus, the meningeal veins,
Meningeal, where's that? That is very small.
the pharyngeal venous plexus,
Yeah.
the common facial vein,
Where's that?
the common facial vein,
So around here, yeah.
and the superior and middle thyroid veins. Let's quickly take a look at each of these tributaries now. The sigmoid sinus, which we have already mentioned, collects and drains venous blood from the regions of the brain.
Okay, now it's going to deeper. So, sinus sigmoideus. So here they drain venous blood from regions of the brain.
It is formed as a continuation of the transverse sinuses of the brain.
Continuation of transverse sinuses. They might have searched
It
that.
drains into the internal jugular vein at the jugular foramen of the skull. Into the internal jugular vein, transverse sinuses of the brain. It drains into the internal jugular vein at the jugular foramen of the skull.
At the jugular foramen. She said jugular foramen?
Jugular vein at the jugular foramen
At the jugular foramen.
of the skull. The inferior petrosal sinus lies within the middle cranial fossa and drains regions of the middle cranial fossa, brain, and inner ear.
Inferior petrosal. The inferior petrosal sinus drains oh man, I'm tired. Drains middle cranial fossa the middle section of the three parts. The brain. Oh shoot! I didn't need to do that. Brain and inner ear.
They originate from the postero-inferior aspects of the cavernous sinuses on each side of the sella turcica.
What?
Brain and inner ear. They originate from the postero-inferior aspects of the cavernous sinuses on each side of the sella turcica. The
Sella turcica. Turcica. I guess it's that. It's a saddle shade depression. Oh, actually, I learned about this. Saddle shade depression is found in the human sphenoid bone. Yeah. I guess it's here. Middle. Oh, the shadow shade in the middle. So it's that. Okay, I guess here. Yeah. Posterior inferior aspects of the cavernous sinuses. Venous sinus located within the cave. Okay. Poster.
aspects of the cavernous sinuses on each side of the sella turcica.
Either side of the sella turcica.
The inferior petrosal sinus travels through the jugular foramen of the skull to drain into the internal jugular vein. In this image, we can identify one of the many meningeal veins, the middle meningeal vein. The meningeal veins travel with the meningeal arteries and drain the dura mater, which is one of the meninges surrounding the brain. The meninges are protective membranous layers that envelope and protect the brain and spinal cord. Moving on to the neck, we find the pharyngeal venous plexus, a network of veins which surrounds the pharynx. The pharyngeal venous plexus is formed by the union of the pharyngeal veins posterolateral to the larynx. It drains regions of the pharynx and superficial neck into the internal jugular veins. The common facial vein drains the superficial structures of the face. This vein, the facial neck, into the internal jugular veins. The common facial vein drains the superficial jugular veins. Face. This vein is formed by the union of the facial vein, and this vein is formed by the union of the facial vein, and the interior branch of the retromandibular vein. It travels inferiorly to drain into the internal jugular vein, just below the jaw, as we can see here. The final tributaries of the internal jugular vein are the superior and middle thyroid veins. These veins originate from a glandular venous plexus and drain regions of the thyroid gland. The superior and middle thyroid veins, accompanied with their arterial counterparts, course anterior to the common carotid artery to drain into the internal jugular vein. Let's now move on to take a look at the subclavian vein. The subclavian
I think it's probably best to go through the whole video and then relook at it.
vein is one of the main veins of the neck. It is also a paired vessel with both a left and a right counterpart. As its name suggests, it lies tucked just beneath the clavicle. The subclavian vein begins as a continuation of the axillary vein at the lateral edge of the first rib. As it travels towards the sternal end of the clavicle, it joins with the internal jugular vein to form and drain into the brachiocephalic vein. The subclavian vein drains the upper limb, drain into the brachiocephalic vein. The subclavian vein drains the upper limb and small portions of the neck. Tributaries of the subclavian vein include the anterior jugular vein, the external jugular vein, and the veins of the upper limb. Let's quickly take a look at each of these tributaries. The anterior jugular vein is a paired blood vessel that drains structures of the anterior compartment of the neck. It is formed by the confluence of the submandibular veins just under the chin. It travels down the anterior surface of the neck and drains into the subclavian vein just before it joins with the internal jugular vein. The anterior jugular vein can sometimes drain directly into the external jugular vein. The external jugular vein drains superficial structures of the head, including the scalp and face. It is formed by the union of the posterior auricular vein and the posterior branch of the retromandibular vein near the angle of the mandible. This vein travels down the neck, superficial to the sternocleidomastoid muscle, and drains into the subclavian vein right before it joins with the internal jugular vein. As a continuation of the axillary vein, the subclavian vein ultimately receives deoxygenated blood from all the veins of the upper limb. Moving on to the final main vein of the head and neck, we meet the brachiocephalic vein. The brachiocephalic vein is also known as the innominate vein. As we know, the brachiocephalic vein is formed by the confluence of the internal jugular vein and the subclavian vein, just posterior to the sternoclavicular joint. Venous blood from regions of the head and neck, upper limb, and the upper part of the thorax drain into the brachiocephalic vein. It then drains into the superior vena cava and into the right atrium of the heart. The brachiocephalic vein receives four main tributaries, which include the internal jugular vein and the subclavian vein, which we've already described earlier. The other tributaries are the vertebral vein and the internal thoracic vein. As its name suggests, the vertebral vein travels along the vertebral column, down through the transverse foramina of the cervical vertebrae to reach the brachiocephalic vein. The vertebral vein originates from a venous plexus in the suboccipital triangle and drains structures such as the suboccipital muscles, the prevertebral muscles of the neck, and the cervical spine. The prevertebral muscles of the neck and the cervical spine. The prevertebral muscles of the neck and the cervical spine. It terminates at the base of the neck and drains into the brachiocephalic vein just medial to the internal jugular vein. The internal thoracic vein drains the upper thorax, chest wall, and breasts, and is formed
Upper thorax,
chest wall,
the internal thoracic vein. I guess it's these. I should check that actually.
radial to the internal jugular vein. The internal thoracic vein drains the upper thorax,
I guess this is green. Internal
chest wall,
thoracic vein.
and breasts, and is formed as continuations of the musculophrenic and superior epigastric veins of the thorax.
Frank now. Muscular phrenic. Provide the muscles of the thoracic. Okay. Epigastric. Epigastric.
Thorax. As it collects venous blood from surrounding structures, it travels superiorly to drain into the brachiocephalic vein. As with most veins in the body, this vein contains valves which are vitally important here to prevent the backflow of blood as the vein travels superiorly. Before we finish up, let's take a quick look at some clinical notes surrounding the veins of the head and neck. You may have heard of the danger triangle of the face before. This is the triangle that extends from the corners of the mouth to the bridge of the nose. The reason why this is such a dangerous area is because of the veins in our face. The facial vein communicates with the cavernous sinus via the angular vein.
Cavernous sinus.
This is a fact of great
Sinus.
clinical significance because any
Angular
the
vein.
angular vein. This is a fact of great clinical significance because any infection of the region of the face drained by the fact of great vein can spread to the cavernous sinus, resulting in a serious condition. The facial vein can spread to the cavernous sinus, resulting in a serious condition called thrombosis of the cavernous sinus. The cavernous sinus is a venous sinus of the brain, which houses important cranial nerves involved in eye movements. Thrombosis of the cavernous sinus may lead to internal strabismus or crossed eyes if cranial nerve 6 is damaged, doubled vision while looking downward if cranial nerve 4 is affected, or ophthalmoplegia, which is a paralysis or weakness if 4 is affected,
Cranial nerve 6. Strabismus. Cross-eyed. Double eye. Double vision would be.
or ophthalmoplegia, which is a paralysis or weakness of the eye muscles. An infection, which is a paralysis or weakness of the eye muscles. An infection that spreads to the facial vein and then to the dural venous sinuses may simply occur as a result of a nasal abscess or after squeezing a large pustule or pimple on the side of the nose and upper lip. So leave those pimples alone. If cranial nerve 4 is affected, or ophthalmoplegia, which is a paralysis or weakness of the eye muscles. An infection, which is a paralysis or weakness of the eye muscles. An infection that spreads to the facial vein and then to the dural venous sinuses may simply occur as a result of a nasal abscess or after squeezing a large pustule, or simply occur as a result of a nasal abscess or into the dural venous sinuses.
Dural venous.
May simply occur as a result of a nasal abscess or after squeezing a large pustule or pimple on the side of the nose and upper lip. So leave those pimples alone. We've made it to the end of this tutorial, but before we finish, let's go over a quick summary of what we learned today. In today's tutorial, we learnt about the main veins of the head and neck. The main purpose of these veins is to drain venous blood to the superior vena cava and into the heart. The first vein that we met was the internal jugular vein. This vein drains regions of the brain, skull, oral cavity, as well as the superficial structures of the face and neck. We met the main tributaries of the internal jugular vein, which included the sigmoid sinus, the inferior petrosal sinus, the meningeal veins, the pharyngeal venous plexus, the common facial vein, and the superior and middle thyroid veins. The sigmoid and inferior petrosal sinus unite to form the internal jugular vein and drain regions of the brain. The meningeal veins drain of the brain. The pharyngeal venous plexus drains surrounding the
inferior petrosal sinus.
The pharyngeal venous plexus drains the pharynx and the superficial neck. The common facial vein drains the superficial structures of the face, and the superior and middle thyroid veins drain the thyroid gland. Next, we came to the subclavian vein, which is one of the main veins of the neck. It begins as a continuation of the axillary vein at the lateral edge of the first rib. The subclavian vein drains regions of the upper limb and neck. It has three main tributaries, which include the anterior jugular vein, the external jugular vein, and the veins of the upper limb. The anterior jugular vein and the veins of the upper limb. The anterior jugular vein drains regions of the neck. The external jugular vein drains the scalp and face. As a continuation of the axillary vein, the subclavian vein ultimately drains the blood from all the veins of the upper limb. The final vein that we met was the brachiocephalic vein. This vein is formed by the union of the internal jugular vein and the subclavian vein. The brachiocephalic vein drains regions of the head, neck, upper limbs, and upper thorax. The four main tributaries of the brachiocephalic vein include the internal jugular vein, the subclavian vein, the vertebral vein, and the internal thoracic vein. The vertebral vein drains the cervical spine and the prevertebral muscles, while the internal thoracic vein drains regions of the upper thorax and chest. Finally, we identified the danger triangle of the face and explored how superficial infections within this area can spread to deeper regions such as the cavernous sinus, which may lead to thrombosis of the cavernous sinus. That brings us to the end of this tutorial. See you next time. But don't let your learning stop there. Visit kenhub.com where you can read interesting articles, test your knowledge with challenging quizzes.
Okay, take a 6-minute break.
Explore our atlas with
I'll watch this tomorrow. I can't be asked. Good night.